Now we have a former Attorney General and the political leader of the Movement for National Development, MND, Mr. Garvin Nicholas. Pleasant good evening to you, Mr. Nicholas.
Good evening, Mikey, and good evening to all your listeners.
Yeah, I know you have been in and out, but you have been staying steady. You know, I always there are three basic fundamentals to any campaign, and of course that's timing, message, and money. So tonight I want to ask about the pocket. I'm talking more of the timing and the message. The MND, with so many issues facing us here in this country, I want to ask you, as far as the issue of crime, how would a Garvin MND government deal with such an issue?
But Mikey, I mean, this is local government season, and I just want to let you know we have actually decided not to contest the local. I can probably tell you a little more about that later on in the show.
Sure.
But as far as we are dealing with crime as an issue, crime obviously is a national issue, and crime is a multifaceted problem. One of the things that leads to crime, if you want to get to understand about crime, you should talk to criminals or people who actually commit crimes. And you will notice, first of all, that a number of these criminals actually have less education or learning disabilities than the average Trinidadian male, because it's mostly males who commit these crimes.
Right.
You will also notice that many times they come from neighborhoods and communities that are depressed.
Right.
And you will find that there is a link between the lack of education, the family breakdown, the community, the state of the community. And then, of course, you go to so having identified that aspect, you also look at other issues such as the ability to commit crime without being caught. So a criminal reacts to a number of things like that. So I'm trying to paint a whole picture of what actually causes or fuels criminal activity.
Yeah, but with all due respect there, Garvin, and I understand what you're saying, but how much of that does, as far as patience goes, when it comes to the general public? Because you're talking about someone jumping your wall, coming into your home, invading your territory, assaulting your family. At that period and point, most people don't want to have any level of trying to figure out what created this problem, the genesis of the problem. They simply want it to stop. So what role do we have as the general public when it comes to doing this entire social assessment to find out what caused this issue?
Okay. Now, if it is that you have you live next to a dam,
Right.
and you find that your house is getting flooded because the dam has a leak, right? You wouldn't spend your time mopping up the floor every day. What you want to do is to plug the leak so that you prevent the problem.
Right.
Right? It's the same thing with crime. We need to get to the bottom of why it is we have so much crime. And because if we just concentrate on putting up a high wall to prevent the man from jumping your wall, that isn't going to solve the crime. You want to prevent the man from wanting to jump the wall. You want to prevent the man from having or wanting to come into your house. And as such, you have to identify the causes of crime. you want to deal with crime, you must identify the causes of crime and you must treat the causes of crime. So you deal with crime by sorting out your education system. You want to identify the people with learning disabilities early o'clock. You want to identify the problem children early o'clock. And then you deal with them. You try to deal with the broken community and the broken family. You want to create facilities within your communities so that people have things to do, so that they don't turn to gang membership, which then leads to crime and criminal activity. Yes, you also want to deal with having a system in place that will track the movements of criminals to prevent them from coming into your house. So that you have cameras set up where you can see somebody entering a house, and then you need somebody to be able to respond to that. So you need to have a police service that is agile. You need to have a police service that is not corrupt, with people that you can depend on, people who have relationships with the community, and people who can properly gather evidence, who could build a case, who could prosecute. And then when they prosecute you, you want a system in place in the courts that will move quickly, that will convict,
Understood.
and then will rehabilitate.
Right.
You see, there's a number of issues, and you have to put it all together.
And I respect that, Mr. Nicholas, because you're right. It's not a one-dimensional thing at all. And when you spoke about education, it takes us back to a prime minister who said, Dr. Keith Rowley, that over 2,000 of our students fell through the cracks in the midst of the entire pandemic. Now, they cannot be viewed as liabilities. They have to be looked at as assets because they are the future. So basically what you're saying is that we need to attack the culture. Am I correct?
We need to attack the culture. We need to, as I said, we need to really look at this thing from, as you quite rightly said, a multidimensional approach. We just can't be talking about wanting to hang people or to arm the citizens and those kind of things. That is not how I see we will deal with crime.
And I respect that. And when you talk about the culture, understand this is something that has been embedded in us. I mean, this basically is our social DNA. It's not just who we know, but who knows us. Because the average Trinbagonian would say, listen, I don't want to stand in a line. I don't want to go through that long process. If I can pay someone, if I can get a hookup, if I know a link. And again, that makes up who we are and how we function as a society. How do we then deal with this head on?
The reason people look for shortcuts is because the system is broken, because the system is inefficient. When you go to places where the system is efficient, you stay in line. I remember giving a talk at a Rotary Club one time and explaining to them that when you come, you're a person in what you call, you're a person in society, and you can make a call and you can get to the head of the line. Every time you make a call to put yourself at the head of the line, you're putting somebody further back who is lining up. And if that person then gets frustrated, because what should have taken a week is now taking them 2 months, because they keep getting pushed back because somebody climbing the line in front of them. That is when you have, that is how you break the system. And what I am saying is, if you have a system that works for everybody efficiently without people jumping the line, then that's the first step towards creating a society that works.
And I respect that. Now, you're also an attorney at law, and I was speaking to Brian Big earlier, who's also an attorney at law. The backdrop of it was, of course, the comments made by Dr. Rudal Munilal that the current government wants to jail a judge, and they're trying to lock up a judge because of his statements from the bench, statements that are critical of the government. It seems that we're seeing more and more of this political hand playing out in the arena that is supposed to be independent. And how many more independent agencies are we just going to sit by and see compromise and do nothing? How does that make you feel?
Again, in order for our country to move forward, there must be strong institutions. And in order to have proper rule of law, you must have strong institutions. And you must have separation of powers. So that wanting to influence the police by ensuring that you decide who the commissioner of police is, and you're tinkering with promotion, and you're tinkering with the term of the police commissioner, or you want to decide who the DPP is, and you want to ensure that you have a relationship with the Chief Justice. All of those things go against proper democracy, proper rule of law, proper functioning of a society. When you see a prime minister could be fined for having a COVID party and be taken out of office for breaking the law that he decided to put in place during COVID regulations as pertained in the UK, you understand how separation of powers work and what is necessary in order to create a functioning, efficient, working society. And when you break that down, what you do is create dictatorship, and you create anarchy, and everything breaks down. And that is where we are heading.
Let me ask you this. I had Prakash Ramada on a few weeks ago, last week, I believe. And I asked him the question, do you believe that our current constitution is now obsolete, that we have evolved beyond that? And his reply was, we haven't even scratched the surface with the current constitution to even understand, in order for us to expand on it, to have any sort of reform. Do you agree with that?
Well, you see, the Constitution, whilst I believe that there should be some constitutional reform, and it should come in the form of allowing for greater access by way of proportional representation, and we should reform how I would do it. I would keep the lower house as it is, but I would elect an upper house via proportional representation, and I would probably go to have an executive president elected by all the people. But our present constitution, as it is, has been used by other countries, and they have worked extremely well. So it is not necessary that the Constitution is causing the problem. It is the people who are managing the system with the Constitution that are causing the problem.
Yeah, and you're right about that. You're right, because management is one of the key things. And looking at other aspects as well, when you look at as far as generating revenue, now we've taken, like most countries, a hit with this COVID pandemic, but we've heard nothing as far as direct foreign investment, how we're going to ignite the economy. A lot of SMEs were unable to reopen their doors after the pandemic, about 5,000 retail outlets. What would a Garvin Nicholas MND government do to deal with such a situation?
Well, to begin with, I believe that a country is best when there are a multitude of small business. So that I would always try to ensure that we support small and micro industry and entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurship should be a subject in school, because we don't teach people how to get into business. We teach people how to become employees, not entrepreneurs. And our tourism industry is extremely underutilized, because we really, I don't know, we continue to put people who don't seem to have any idea whatsoever in charge of tourism in Trinidad and Tobago. When in fact, tourism, if utilized properly, would be able to sustain Trinidad and Tobago on its own. If you then have a vibrant small business and manufacturing sector that you help with not only local production for local consumption but for export, you will then also have a healthy small business sector. And oil and gas would just be the icing on the cake for the economy, not the driver. Because there are many countries with much less resources than we have that use their resources and their assets to generate tourism, the tourism revenue that runs them on their own.
You did mention, of course, earlier on local government elections, the MND will not be putting any candidates out there. Please expand on that. Why is that?
Yes, well, the original intention was to put 10 candidates in Diego Martin because the MND we said that we would just concentrate on the Diego Martin borough. And we had a conversation with the UNC. As you know, the leader of the UNC has stated that she was willing to speak to smaller parties and see if there can be any kind of arrangement put in place that would allow for us to probably have a free run against the PNM. But I have noticed in trying to put this together and analyzing it, that there are still a number of parties that want to put slates in the Diego Martin area. I came across candidates who have done a lot of work, put in a lot of work in trying to get themselves elected, and some of them really good candidates. And because of the melee, because of our own resources and our we were unable to actually get, in my view, 10 really good candidates. I decided that it might be the best thing for all concerned and for the population and people of Diego Martin to have probably less choice, because sometimes too much choice isn't a good thing.
All right.
And therefore we decided that we would step back for this election and allow the candidates that are already on the ground doing their work to proceed, and hopefully that will give them the best opportunity to change the dynamic that is Diego Martin.
And let me ask you a final question that I want to ask you is that you've been in the arena, the political arena, for quite some time, former Attorney General, former Minister of Communications. You've been very active. What have you learned so far as political maturity in your own personal capacity? What is that lesson that really stands out the most that has affected you?
Well, for me, politics isn't about me. Politics is about what we can achieve for the people using the best people, using the best resources. And in fact, coming to this place in my maturity, I was able to advise that we actually step back and not necessarily run into an election that we are not fully prepared for and that will not actually present the population, the voting population in Diego Martin, with the best choices or the clearest choices, because there would be too many people to choose from. And it has been my experience that when there are too many choices, the incumbent wins. And we don't want the incumbent to win, because the incumbent has been proven not to be good for Diego Martin.
All right. I want to thank you so much for taking time out and linking with us this evening. It has been a pleasure. And of course, best of luck to you and your entire team. And let's see what the MND has to offer in the near future. I guess you're sharpening up everything for the general elections when that is called.
Indeed.
All right. Thank you so much again, and keep up the good work.
Okay.
Thank you.